Good morning, North America. Welcome to Church Talk TV. Lively talk about life, church, and church life. I'm your co-host, Dr. Bill Tenney-Britton, and I'm joined, as usual, by my co-host, Dr. Kris Tenney-Britton, and we're broadcasting from our studio in Columbia, Missouri, the heartland of America. Say good morning, Kris.
Well, good morning, and welcome to Church Talk TV.
Kris and Bill Tenney-Britton here. Today we're talking about kind of a hot topic. Why don't people go to church? What's that all about?
Yeah, just wonder about that. Do you wonder about that? We talk a lot about this. My guess is y'all talk a lot about this if you're having a little bit of trouble getting people to come to your church.
And over 85% of churches are having that kind of trouble.
Exactly. Congratulations if you're among the 15%. There it is. Anyways, a lot of us sit around and we talk about that because we wonder, well, how can we get people to come to our church? Well, perhaps, and we're going to hold by this, that it's the real question we should be asking is, why aren't people coming to our church? Why aren't people coming to church to begin with? What do you have to say?
Well, I mean, let's be honest. We live in a culture now where nobody wants to go to church. Now, you and I know that that's, hyperbole. That's
generalization.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
So when I say nobody, I mean, well, let's be honest, often nobody. There's times when you don't want to go to church. There's times when I don't want to go to church. And, that's just how it is sometimes.
That's a good question. I'm sorry. I just broke you off or cut you off. But, yeah, I mean, that's like, hello, there are times you don't want to go to church. Can you deny that, right?
Yeah,
you
right.
want to sleep in, or you've got somewhere else you'd rather be.
Or someplace you feel like you need to be.
Right, exactly, other than in church, which says that you don't always want to go to church, right? We have that choice.
Right.
Or we don't always go to church. You might say, I might say, I want to go to church, but.
Well, and then there are those who don't have a choice. They have to go to church. They're being paid to show up.
Right.
Or, and it's like, there are times. And folks, we get it. We really do get it. I love the passage in Hebrews that says, forsake not the gathering of yourselves together, which is, of course, if you read in a larger context, is taken way out of context most of the time. But it doesn't change the reality that it is inviting us to get together on a regular basis. But I want to remind you that a regular basis, at least in the Old Testament law, back in the day, Jesus' day, you were required to go to church 3 times a year. That's just one more time than your Christmas and Easter people. They're 2/3 there. Don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating excuses. I'm not saying that's not the way it ought to be. Should we be faithful? Should we be in church on a regular basis, weekly? We absolutely believe so. But the problem we have when it comes to, and I'm talking about the church, that we have when it comes to trying to figure out how to get people to come is that we have our well-churched minds in place instead of saying what's in the mind of unchurched Bob and Barbara. And so this morning I want to talk about unchurched Bob and Barbara, and I want to talk about church from their perspective, as opposed from our perspective of they ought to be there.
Right.
You're
right. Oh my goodness, how many times have we heard that?
Absolutely.
Right.
Since the 1950s, and back in the 1950s, and I don't remember the 1950s. I was born there, but I don't remember anything about it. But be that as it may, is in the 1950s in the United States, North America, it was 1954 actually, was the moment where we had the most people in the States, at least, attending church or being an active member of a church. It was something like 58% of Americans were active in some way in churches. Now, today, that number has plummeted. And, it's been a slow bleed, but it's been an ongoing bleed.
Now we're hemorrhaging.
Right, now we're hemorrhaging.
Right, slow bleed, now hemorrhaging.
But back in the 50s and the 60s, everyone went to church. And if they didn't go to church, they knew they should. And again, hyperbole. Right. But the reality is there was a cultural norm that church attendance was a thing. There are advertisements in newspapers, in magazines that show car manufacturers saying, this is the car to go to church in. you don't see much of that anymore.
Yeah, they wouldn't be selling many cars,
Oh,
would
well, at
they?
least not for that reason
Well,
anyway.
we'll sell you this car and then you can go to church. Just imagine what all those people are going to think. Forget your friends because your friends won't see it there. But then you can use that bumper sticker that says, "Follow me to church."
Right, exactly.
What church?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, yeah,
All right,
right. So let's get down to this. We've talked a little bit about, which you already know, the scenario, right? Well, one of those reasons is that church just isn't practical. We go and it's one of those so what. I visited a church many years ago, so I can say this. Well, not too many years ago, but probably about 8 or 9, 10 years ago. And it was a little church, and the minister had prepared this sermon, and she was obviously using a famous preacher's preaching habit or preaching pieces. You may
She
like
borrowed the
pulpit,
sermon.
yeah. Well, it wasn't that person's sermon. I don't think. I think she was weaving it, but she was using that person's ideas.
Okay.
Okay. And so every time she wanted to quote or use that quote or a quote from that article, say in her sermon, she would say, "Well, so and so says." And I'm thinking, these people have no idea who so and so is,
And don't care.
So what? Well, but maybe they'll care because, oh wow, okay. But she did that 3 or 4 different times, and then we left there knowing something, partly that we didn't know who so and so was, but we left there and that was all. We didn't even feel good about why we were there. So why on earth should I give up we say 1 hour of my week, but why give up an hour and a half of my week? More like 2.5 hours when you count in what it takes to get ready to go and the drive there.
We're not going to go there because 2 hours is being very, very minimalistic in this case. Sorry. Moving on.
Yeah, moving on.
It takes a while to get
so,
there.
So we need it to be practical.
Right,
There's got to be a reason that they come.
Right. Well, I just want to build on what you said. Is in that when Kris is talking about being practical, what she means is, I think what she means, I'm going to put words in her mouth, and she'll tell me if I'm wrong or not. It won't be the first time. Well, also won't be the first time I put words in her mouth. But what she's saying is, hey, when they show up to church, they expect to go home with more than a gee whiz kind of, well, that was interesting. Do you know that no one lost sleep last night or last week or last month sweating over whether the Trinity was for real? Or trying to understand the Trinity? Maybe some theologian somewhere in some place. But
some people may say, "Oh, wow, cool, never thought about that," or "Hey, let's argue that." I'm not
maybe,
so sure.
but
maybe.
But Bob and Barbara
food
don't.
for thought. I mean,
Bob,
that's what they're giving.
Yeah, Bob and Barbara are not. Church Bob and Barbara
Probably
aren't worried about that. They're not thinking about that. They don't care about that. As important as it is to you and me, it is not important to them. And when they come to a church and they hear a sermon on, that again is talking theology or talking how the church should behave or talking about what the church does, it's irrelevant to the life. It's not just not practical.
Right.
It's not even relevant to the life.
Right.
It's like, why would I put myself in a place where I'm going to invest 2 or 3 hours in getting ready and sitting down there and enduring whatever the worship is, whether they love it or don't, but then, and they get to this sermon topic and it's like, okay, that was interesting. Maybe. Not really.
Right. Okay. So you said the word. And for me, as I was sitting there, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to say practical, but it's practical and relevant. The two really go together. So, there's that relevant. How is that relevant to my life? So the question we're asking is, how is that relevant to your life? Now, a lot of us will say, well, because you should know about the Trinity. How many times have we heard that? Well, they should know this and they need to know that. And then I have to come back and say, why? But adding to
because
that.
that's Orthodox theology. And that's a good thing to learn in Sunday school,
right,
not from the pulpit.
But they're not ready for that.
Right.
Exactly. Right. When we learn this in difficult, painful ways, we would have people come to Sunday school classes, usually Sunday school classes, not our small groups, that we were leading and I mean, separately and together. And we felt like you needed all this background information, let me draw out all of these things you'll find in a
tenets that we have.
And
right.
we lost them. They like literally sometimes we lost them because they were babies in the faith or not really there deeper in their faith, and we're giving them head stuff with what they're looking for is life
What
stuff.
they need is
yeah,
life
what they
stuff.
need
They
is life
practical.
stuff.
Going back
There's
to your
a
word.
practical.
And I want to go one more
Yeah,
step.
go.
It's not just about relevance. Relevance is important. It's
Right.
not just about practical importance.
Go.
They have to see that it's valuable.
Oh,
and when I say
yeah.
valuable, I mean valuable to their life, that it's something they can apply and put into practice. And again, it's practical,
Right.
but it has a benefit for them. And let's be honest, most sermons have very little benefits attached. Maybe lots of features, and there's a difference. A feature the car has 4 doors, it gets good gas mileage. Some people buy a car for that. Most people buy a car because, hey, it's fun to drive, and I get heads turned when I drive it, and etc. So what is the benefit that they get from being in or listening to your sermon? What do they walk away with that's valuable? You go, that applies to my life. I feel better. I work better. My relationships are better. My marriage is healed. My kids are, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I realize I keep touching you, and I don't mean to cut you off at all. You can't see my hands, and because that's not. It's like, wait, I've got an idea here too. I want to. It's not just about your sermon, and it's not just
right,
about
exactly.
your worship service. It's about a totality. I was just
All
talking
your
to a
programming.
pastor. Right, I was just talking to a pastor about that, and we were talking about using. I don't want to say who the pastor is. So we were talking about using a particular resource. I'm just going to say purpose-driven life. Okay, that wasn't what it was. So we were talking about that, and then that pastor said, "Oh wait, yeah, we're going to do this. I've got the book, and I'm ready to start preaching on it and using that." But then somebody came and said, "Hey, I'd really like to do a series on on The Chosen." And so it was, I think we'll do something. It's like, whoa, wait. What we want to do, if you're committed to purpose-driven life, then do everything around purpose-driven life, and your youth programming, your children's programming, all of it. And let's hold The Chosen off, and then you can switch that out, focus on The Chosen. You want to be offering something that's total life, that can make a difference for them. Their whole family, not just them and their friends.
Right. And you're talking thematicizing, your programming at your church. And the reality is, we attended a church that tried this, and they did financial peace. And they insisted everything and everybody do financial peace, which actually...
Even their small groups.
Yeah, even their small groups, which in theory was a great idea. The problem was...
They let it out of the bag.
Well, yeah, they let the cat out of the bag and said, well, the whole reason we're doing this is so you can give more money to the church. And it became very self-serving, as opposed to, we're doing this because we know the majority or many of our members are over their heads in, financially. They're over their heads in debt and whatnot. Motivation is really important here. So, but the idea was a great idea.
It was a great idea. And they did it well. Oh my gosh, we know people who...
We have a daughter who's debt-free from that.
Thousands of dollars of debt-free.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and has been debt-free for years now because of it. But in this particular case, it killed the church because of motivation, which is, maybe we talk about that some other time.
That's another day.
We're talking about why people don't go to church. And then, so one of the reasons is they don't go to church because they don't find it practical or helpful, valuable in their lives. But I want to say there's another reason why they don't go to church. And of course, I think that's the main reason. But there's another reason. And that's because Bob and Barbara have what they do on Sunday, and it's their ritual.
Right.
They get up, Bob and Barbara, and this is where, if you're going to figure out how to reach people in your community, you start with them. Don't start with you. Don't project on where you think they are. Go have conversations and find out where they are. That's huge advice, because we don't do it. We just project and think, well, we know what they're like. Well, we don't. They're unchurched. You're churched. You're in you're like in a fish pond or a fish bowl, and you're there, and they're not. So start with them. But in any event, so Bob and Barbara, they get up on Sunday morning, and I don't. This is just one Bob and Barbara I do know. And they get up and they get their coffee, and they do a light breakfast. They always do. And then they sit down and they watch, what is the program with George Stephanopoulos?
Oh, yes, Sunday morning with George Stephanopoulos.
Sunday morning with George, and they watch this religiously.
Right.
Really, religiously. They don't miss it. And there's a lot of folks who do that. Others, I know that they get up, they get ready, they take their kids to soccer practice or the soccer
Right.
games, or they're on the road for
Right.
the basketball games, the traveling teams and all that. And that's their Sunday rituals. Now, when you invite someone like that to church, they're going, let's see, I've got what I do every Sunday,
Right.
whether it's sleep in.
Right.
Almost no one sleeps until noon, by the way. Young people sometimes do.
I
but
know some.
yeah,
that
but not
are-
a whole lot. And so it's only Sunday. Only day I get to sleep
It depends
in.
on who it is.
Right.
Okay.
But the majority, that's not the deal. And but it's an excuse. Well, it's the only day I get to sleep in. Really?
Okay.
Anyway, there's all these excuses. But what they're really saying is, I have the stuff that I do, and I have to weigh it up against
Right.
how I perceive the value in what you're offering me. And again, it goes back to that practical thing.
Right.
But it's like, to break my habits, to break out of what I'm doing, there's got to be a pretty compelling reason. And going to church is, for most people,
Right.
not a very good reason for that.
Right.
They just don't.
So let's see. There are excuses and there are reasons. You and I kind of disagree as to which is which. But for me, an excuse is something like, I need you, please excuse me. A reason is this is why. So there are parents, and let's face it, a lot of soccer teams, and I'm sure Little League and whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
Right, they play, and so that's
On
a
Sundays.
reason. On Sunday, that's right. On Sundays, one of my beefs was where we did Wednesday programming years ago. When you do Wednesday programming,
Back in the day.
and one of our elders, right, our spiritual leaders in the church, he was a coach of a soccer team, and he had control over when they practiced, and he practiced on Wednesday evening. We had to have some conversation about that. But anyways, all that notwithstanding, so you have those who have reasons. But then one of the things I love to do is drive through a neighborhood on a Sunday morning and see what people are doing. And I watch so many people mowing their lawns, right? And so that becomes, we hear this, it's the only time I have to do chores, or the only time before the week starts again where I can spend time really with my kids. So now we have to think, how do we work around that, right?
Work around it, or the reality is that we are in competition.
Right.
And I just want to throw this out when it comes to kids programming, because even my well-churched people, they're taking their kids to soccer, they're taking their kids to softball. Let's think through why. Because let's be honest, the parent thinks that the child is getting more benefit out of soccer or out of baseball than they are out of Moses and the bulrushes in Sunday school.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I don't want to add on to what that problem is. What I do want to add into here, though, is Sunday morning may just not be the right time. Okay?
I'm going to cut you off. You come back with that in a minute. Let me finish the point I was making.
Okay, go ahead.
All right.
It's church talk. I
Right.
talked inappropriately.
Lively
Too soon.
conversation.
Yeah. Okay, go.
All right. So they're choosing this over that, and they're choosing this over the soccer over church, because in soccer, little league sports teams, whatever, what do the kids get? What do they go away with? They get leadership skills. They're taught teamwork. They're taught, of course, the skills of the playing. They're taught how to lose. They're taught good sportsmanship. The list goes on. What do they learn in Sunday school? How to make macaroni necklaces, and again, Moses and the bulrushes. And we go, we don't understand why they don't show up to Sunday school. Well, maybe we ought to be teaching leadership and all the rest of that. And again, now going back to where you say,
I'll go there in a minute. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead then.
Are you ready?
Yeah, go for it.
So I'm going to go there in a minute. But here's the other thing about these sports team. It isn't done in just on one day. It's done over several days and actually over a season, right? So and it's not just this is what you should do. I mean, this is one of my pieces about churches. We stand up on our pulpits and we talk about why you should be involved in this and how you have to do this differently. We know what, if that worked in and of itself, we would have been out of a job 2,000 years ago, right? I mean, Jesus tried that and it didn't work that way. So what you get you're going to get, okay, be a good sport, but it's how can we help you to be a good sport, right?
It's not just talk. They don't just say,
right.
Here's the 10 Commandments.
Right.
They talk about this is how to do it, and then they give them opportunities, because very rarely are you on a little league team or a soccer team that wins every stinking game.
Right.
And so you get to experience loss and how to be a good loser. And you, if you're not a good loser, the coach, if it's a good coach,
Sure.
is say that's not okay, and they're teaching it because
Right.
it's behavior based. And macaroni necklaces and
Stop being so ugly about macaroni necklaces. I have a lot of macaroni, and people don't make macaroni necklaces anymore in Sunday school.
yeah, they do. Anyway, but whatever it is that we're doing is it, again, it's not translating. Again, it's head knowledge. We're
Right.
educating. We're not training. And
But
there's
it's not full.
there's a reason why Sunday school for little kids and adults has failed at making disciples of Jesus Christ, and people who actually follow, because it's about the head
Right.
and not about behavior. Which again, whether that's on Sunday morning for worship or in your Christian education program,
Right.
that's an issue that, again, relevance, practicality, and value is, are they getting what they need?
Right. Okay, that's good. Now, here's another piece. I don't know that you were thinking about going here. I don't know that I was thinking about going here, but I'm going here. I've worked with a number of churches who have 5 times as many children on a Wednesday evening program than they do on a Sunday morning.
Absolutely.
And people
See a
get
lot.
really upset. I've listened to so many complaints, in those churches.
They won't come
when
on
sitting
Sunday.
Yeah, not we. They have all those children at the Wednesday night thing, and none of them ever come back. Well, you know what? I should do it as a man, because sometimes it's a man's voice. Anyways, so that works. That's what works for them. And you have to say what's working, and that becomes, I think, another piece is we're looking at why they aren't, and then we do have to ask, why are they?
Right.
It's not how can we yet. It's why are they? And to say
And then maximize that program.
Right, exactly.
Put your eggs in that basket and disciple them there.
Right. Is that question? A question there is it really working? Because we're seeing the differences in their lives. And why take and try to force what's working on a Wednesday night and get them into Sunday? And we were trained this way, and I sometimes wonder how many of us consultant coach kind of folk are trying this, that we get people in. We used to talk about getting them in the back door. And we have written with, starting churches and in turnaround church work, we've taken and said, where do you want people to end up ultimately? Do you want to end up in worship? If you want to end up in worship, then how do you take all of these different ministries and help to move them into worship? Are you trying to move them into discipleship? Where are they coming in? How are we going to get them to discipleship? And there's still a thought about that, right? How do we get them into worship? How do we get them into Sunday school, whatever that is? And first we ask, where are we trying to get them? And can that be there? Why is it? What is it we're offering in a worship service that will put them there?
What is it does, but let me just
go ahead.
Okay, there's no
You're
but.
going to translate?
But yeah. What is the ultimate goal? And there's where we miss so often is we think the ultimate goal is Sunday morning worship attendance.
Right.
And if that is the ultimate goal, then okay, great. But if the ultimate goal is making disciples of Jesus, then the question is, how do we make that happen? Now, to be fair, one of the reasons why I try to get everyone there on Sunday morning is because we pass that bucket and we expect money to be put into it.
Right.
But because that's just the way we've always done it. But with electronic giving, and I this sounds crazy. I just read an article, and I don't remember who it was. I wish I could. I'd love to cite the source. But an article of someone who said maybe it's time to go away from offerings and tithes and offerings and move into a membership model, a subscription model. This is what it costs to be a part of this, and every and there's this minimum whatever, so maybe premium subscription.
Oh, I just am really uneasy. We've talked about this before.
No argument about it. It is like
it
it was an interesting article. Yeah, I'm not saying that's the way to go, but one of the electronic giving does essentially, maybe not that, because again, motivation. Talking about the church that did the financial piece to so that people would give more money to the church.
Brilliant.
Brilliant in terms of motivation.
Yeah.
So but the electronic giving may take care of a lot of that issue. If people are getting what they need, and it's not through Sunday morning worship, they're getting it elsewhere, and they are experiencing a life transformation through small groups or other programming, then okay. But again, it comes back to what you said. What are we trying to get them from and to, and getting, again, getting Bob and Barbara out of their Sunday morning ritual to show up at your worship service, the question is why would they want to come? Why would they want to break their rituals? And again, it comes down to, like I said, practical, relevant value.
Right.
If they don't perceive it, then they're not coming. And on next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I am doing a 3-day challenge. It's an hour and a half, 1 hour and a half conversations, if you will, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, on how to stop inviting people to church and grow your church anyway. Because let's be honest, your people have been inviting people to church, their neighbors to church for years. Well, they used to invite them to church.
Yeah, now, I'm not so sure now.
No, because they stopped inviting because number one, that they've invited everybody they know. And number two, every time they invite them, they say no. And so we're going to talk about that in 3 days. It's 3 days, 3 workbooks, 3 daily challenges to help you find ways to get your church growing without inviting people to church, but inviting them to something that they really want to come to.
There it is.
Hey, we're almost out of time.
We are out of time, so we have to say goodbye to you. Look forward to seeing you next Monday.
Tuesday and Wednesday.
And challenge. And does that mean, will we be seeing them next Wednesday on Church Talk
We
too?
will see you on Wednesday on Church Talk.
But don't use that as your excuse, not your reason, right? Your excuse for not joining us for the challenge.
Right, and registration is there in the description. Hey, we'll see you next week.
Gotta go. Have a great week. Bye-bye.